Let's talk about electric hypercars, and I have a perfect guest for you guys to talk about it with. His name is Michael Perschke, and he's the CEO of Automobili Pininfarina. Now, this is a new company that's a spin-off of an existing company that a lot of you are familiar with. Paninfarina have helped design many hypercars and supercars, including Ferraris and so forth. Now they're coming up with their own hypercars. There's really not a prototype yet, at least nothing that's been revealed. There's a cool drawing, actually a couple of those cool drawings that you can see. Here's one of them. I'm going to talk to Michael about it. We're going to talk about hypercars, electric car revolution in general, and many other things coming up next.
Taking over the world, electrifying the world, electric.
Welcome to those of you who are watching me live on Patreon, and of course thank you for watching me on YouTube and replay. If you are new to this channel, please consider subscribing so you don't miss anything moving forward. And of course, if you want to watch this live, participate in the chat and so forth, go to patreon.com/E4Electric. All right, guys, I definitely am excited about this conversation. Without further ado, let me introduce to you guys the CEO of Automobili Pininfarina, Michael Perschke. Michael, welcome to the show.
Well, Alex, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So I only recently I found out about your company, and I'm actually very excited about what you're doing. And I know some of my viewers haven't really heard of you either, but this is the time. This is the time to introduce the audience to your company. Now, the name sounds familiar, but I know you're not exactly the same company as Paninfarina as we know it. So can you tell us a little bit about your company and the awesome project that you're working on?
Well, I would say we're a startup company with 88 years of history. The 88 years of history is the design legacy of Pininfarina as a design house. Pininfarina SPA in Turin, which is the design house, and us have the same shareholder, which is the Mahindra Group globally. Yet we are a startup because our pure intention is to be a B2C company and selling products with a brand name Pininfarina, while probably the majority of people know Pininfarina as a design house supplying 61 designs to Ferrari, to Alfa Romeo, to Maserati. So the difference is Pininfarina as a design house is a B2B company catering to automobile companies and property and others as a design company, and we are focusing only creating a consumer brand, and we call it sustainable luxury mobility.
And also, we don't want our viewers to confuse you guys with a company that's right now having, I think they unveiled the H500 at the Beijing Auto Show. That's also part of your family, but not quite what you're doing, correct?
Well, the HK500 actually is a company based in Hong Kong, HK Kinetic, and Pininfarina just supplied the design to that specific car. So Pininfarina acted again as a design house, but they have nothing to do with the HK 500 from a commercial point of view in regards of distributing it.
Okay, so you guys are basically designing the Pininfarina car for consumers.
Correct. The first time in 88 years of history, we do our own car, branded as Pininfarina.
Better late than never, I say.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so the image that people are seeing as I'm talking to you is of the sort of a concept of what you guys are going to unveil, I believe, this summer. So tell me about what we're looking at here, and tell me about the car, the specs, and when will we be able to check it out?
Well, for a very select few, you have a chance to see it the first time in Pebble Beach. We're going to have private viewing in Pebble Beach for a select few collectors, and I would say people who love already hypercars, who own already hypercars. Majority of them probably have British or Italian hypercars. And for the first time, we will have an opportunity to buy a Pininfarina branded hypercar, 100% electric. And as you said, electric performance, it's stunning. We're going to deliver you a performance 0 to 100 kilometers an hour or 62 miles in less than 2 seconds, 0 to 300 in less than 12 seconds. And depending on you to use it on a track on an open road, and speed between 330 and above 400 kilometers an hour.
That's pretty impressive. How big is the how big is the battery pack?
Around about 120 kilowatt.
Okay, so we're by the way, you mentioned it's a hypercar. Now, just to be clear, what is the difference between a hypercar and a supercar?
Well, I think there's no scientific differentiation, but the common knowledge in the market is supercars stop somewhere between 250, 500,000 euros or dollars, and a performance around 600, 800 maximum thousand horsepower. Hypercars start normally between 500,000 and 1 million and tend to have a performance above 1,000 horsepower. And I think the first real hypercar was the Bugatti Veyron. And ever since, you have a small league of hypercars like the LaFerrari and soon the Pininfarina.
Wow. So how much is it going to be? What is the starting price?
Well, if you start saving your money and you get close to 2 million euro, you are part of the club.
I'm gonna start saving on my lunches tomorrow, actually, because this car looks damn good. So now you're saying you're gonna unveil it here at Pebble Beach, and actually a couple hours away from me here. When is it going to be?
Well, we're going to be in a private mansion around Pebble Beach, not on the prototype lawn, because, as we said, it's going to be for a select few. Our strategy is clearly we're selling this car by invitation only. This is not, you cannot go and just buy it. We will have very selective distribution partners. And we're looking at people who are already collectors of Pininfarina cars or of Italian cars. So they value the brand, but at the same time, they're looking out for something new. That's why we call ourselves the first sustainable luxury car company.
So let's say one of my viewers, or two or three, whatever, want to move forward and maybe take a shot at acquiring a car like this, specifically your car. How would they go about contacting you guys and trying to make a purchase?
Very simply go on our website, register, file a request, and then we will filter them through. And then, as I said, we will have the first select view at around Pebble Beach. Probably we're going to have some private viewing in the Silicon Valley. And then probably we might visit New York. And post that, we go to the Middle East.
Wow, sounds good. And then now let's. Oh, by the way, before we move on, when is it going in production, and when do you think you guys will deliver the very first one? And also, how many are you planning to make altogether?
It's going to be produced, as the brand says, it has to be made in Italy for sure. So in our sister company's facility in Cambiano, already today there are limited edition Ferraris produced by hand. This is a facility where we are also planning to produce our PF0. It's going to go into production. SOP is going to be late 2020. And well, if you want to have a real hypercar and a real collector's car, it's going to be less than 100.
Okay, excellent. So let me move on to maybe a little bit more of a technical part here, because I know main sort of complaint about electric cars is that, you know, whenever you want to get real performance out of it and go and race them on the racetrack, well, they're good for like 2 minutes, and after that the battery overheats or whatever, they just can't perform for too long. Tell me about you know, whether or not you've solved that problem, and if so, how and how long can this car sort of last while you're playing around with it on a track?
Well, we can't beat the law of physics, so I think you can't run a whole Le Mans endurance race yet at full performance. That's impossible. Nobody has achieved that. But what we can deliver for sure, we can take it around the Nürburgring in 2 full laps. So our battery cooling is extremely efficient. We work with a few technology partners, and I can say with full confidence we're best in class. And with the technology partners we're working with, the objective is clearly Nürburgring, 2 rounds, and full performance.
That sounds pretty good. So, and you know, tell me why in general. And you know, I understand we can fight physics. So what is that in physics that we're trying to fight here? Why can the batteries perform for too long? Is this a question of the fact that it's lithium-ion batteries? And if so, would the solid-state batteries, something I just talked to Henrik Fisker, something they're working on, is that something going to improve that?
Well, from all what we know right now is solid-state batteries work very well if you're in a very thin cell environment. Nobody has so far achieved a solid cell performance on a full battery pack. So, and on the cylindrical cells, everybody right now is using the 21700. And you can package the one or the other way. It's basically about cooling. So what kind of cooling you apply. So liquid cooling is a must. How you kind of vertically align the batteries where you have a cooling plate. You see gradual improvements, but bottom line, any battery after full throttle use has a certain thermal development. And I think so far nobody has beaten that. And solid state, I would say, is still in a very early state. And I know Hendrik is working intensively on it. I think he filed a few patents, but I think nobody has seen a solid state car on the road with full performance level. It's still in a laboratory, in a test environment, which you can probably not confirm yet, anywhere between 23 and 25 to eventually be on the road in a car and give you better performance. I think so. A lot of testing will flow down the river before we see solid state batteries overtaking the current cylindrical cells.
And by the way, I think I forgot to ask, what is the range of the car as far as what the battery pack is going to offer?
So we have 120 kilowatts. So our target range in the NEF cycle is definitely above 500 kilometers.
And we're talking about what, 300 miles, right? A little over 300 miles.
To 330 miles. That's the target range.
Okay, so that's pretty good. I mean, those people who own these cars rarely drive, take this car to camping to Tahoe and back, right? So I don't think that's going to be a problem. But all right, so definitely, I'm really excited about this, and I'm hoping to see it in person at some point. But let's talk about just electric cars, because obviously you guys are an electric car company. Just from your, I mean, you have tremendous experience in the automotive industry. From your point of view, and I've asked this question a lot. We're still about 1% of all total new car sales in the world are electric cars. Yet, we are able to do amazing things with it. Your car is performing better than 99.9% of gas cars, even, race cars and hypercars, right? The Tesla cars and many other cars are achieving much better, just forget about customer satisfaction, just better features from self-driving and so forth. So, and it's great for our environment and many other things. But how is it that we're still losing? How come is that we're not being able to sell these cars to the general market?
I would ask the question the other way around, because now we're looking at the glass half empty. I would look at the glass half full and say, where have markets adopted EV cars faster? So you see it's a combination of incentive and penalties. So incentives is like Norway, huge incentives to buy electrical cars. We're waiving off import taxes, and you see penetration in Norway is beyond 50%. You had a similar syndrome in Hong Kong, where import taxes were waived for EV cars. Adoption rate was huge. But I think not every state can afford this kind of incentive model. So what we will see more and more is, rather than incentivizing EV cars, it's going to be penalties on combustion engine cars. I think that's the first thing. Consumers will not automatically adopt until and unless there is an incentive right now. Once people are in EV cars, most of them become evangelists of EV cars. But people who don't buy actually buy because of range anxiety and a lack of EV charging infrastructure. Once people drive these cars, they solve the range anxiety mentally, and they get access to good charging infrastructure, people change their opinion. So I think we're still in an early phase where people need to be educated and they need to have a first-hand experience. And definitely an EV car is not yet a car for every part of the planet, because as said, if you don't have a proper EV charging infrastructure, either at home or at work, it becomes a problem. If that is sorted, the uptake will be stronger. If the incentives are there or the penalties for combustion engines are increasing, the adoption rate is getting higher. If you look at China has already a combination of incentive and penalties, and the China adoption rate is the strongest because the Chinese government has an industrial policy. And they said, we're going to be world leader in EV cars. We're going to beat, the Europeans and the Americans with the EV cars. We want to become the global EV leader. And therefore, they solve the EV charging infrastructure. They put penalties on combustion engine, and they give you incentives on EV cars. And I think China has by far the smartest industrial policy on pushing EV cars, and probably the Chinese EV manufacturers will overtake globally all other manufacturers in regards of the penetration with EV technology. Maybe not at the high end, at the low end, at the medium end, we really need to watch out for the Chinese manufacturers.
And so basically what you're saying, it's the price and the lack of charging infrastructure, which really is, I would have to agree with that. What about just a notion that maybe the next 5 to 10 years, because of the self-driving technology that's being developed relatively rapidly right now, despite a couple of setbacks in the last couple of months, what about the notion that we really won't be, the ownership of the cars is going to go away. Everything's going to be a ride sharing service. It will be just nothing but capsules that will transfer us from point A to point B. We won't really be drivers anymore. Do you believe there's some truth to that? And if so, what do you see as a future in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, but I think what you described, sorry to say, unfortunately is very simplistic. And I think it takes part of the truth, not the full truth. This morning I flew from Detroit to Los Angeles, and a couple of cities where what you described will happen, mobility as a service. But we will have still an awful lot of people living on the countryside with no public service, with no Uber, and probably also still no real business case for autonomous driving, let's say as a full complement to individual driving. So I think you will see very different developments. Mega cities like Beijing, Shanghai, maybe New York, maybe Los Angeles, they will come much faster to a state what you described. But I think on a global scale, we still have a very mixed set of mobility developments. And bottom line, I think the last combustion engine car being sold is going to be probably a Porsche or a Ferrari, because there's still people around like yourself, myself, who enjoy driving. Maybe in 20, 25 years, we're going to be fenced off on a test track. But, autonomous driving becomes really effective when any car is autonomous. As long as you have a mix of autonomous cars, semi-autonomous cars, motorcycles, and for less developed world, scooters, rickshaws, that mix of different levels of driving capabilities doesn't make it very easy to talk about what you're describing being tomorrow. I think we look at a time scale between 2030 and 2040, that what you're describing will be probably reality in the metros. And up to then, we will see very mixed developments, because self-driving is not only the car, it's the regulation, it's the road signing, the multiple factors, and it's the cost. I mean, look at the cost of LiDARs. It's not that tomorrow a LiDAR comes at $5,000. If somebody like Active wants to put a car on the road fully with LiDARs and as a self-driving taxi, you look about sensor costs today of $250,000.
But I mean, I have to admit that, I have 2 Teslas and I have autopilot on both of them, and I rarely engage because I do love driving, and I really don't see, I don't even see how that would, at least for me, would ever go away, and I would always enjoy driving. So I see your point there. You're kind of preaching to the choir here. So, before we go, tell us a little bit about maybe your general vision for your company. I know you're right now concentrating on getting this awesome hypercar out there, but as far as the next few years after that, are you looking to maybe expand to different markets? And if so, what do you see for your company?
See, Automobili Pininfarina is a global sustainable luxury brand. So we don't limit ourselves to markets. Let's say the global planet is our market, but of course we're targeting strategic markets by appetite for sustainable luxury and the willingness to buy EV cars at the top end of the pyramid. I think we want to be, maybe if I may say so, a slightly more refined, slightly more luxurious brand than some of the brands which are already around. We don't have to build a brand. We're not like these new kids on the block who still have to establish a brand. We're a startup of 88 years of history. And for us, EV is not a positioning element. EV is an enabler for moving into more sustainable luxury. And it could be that in 10 years, we even deploy fuel cell technology. But for us, it's important that for our consumers who buy our cars, we influence changing mindsets, but even you can enjoy luxury without guilt. So meaning you can have a luxurious car with zero emission tailpipe.
Interesting. Well, so by the way, let me then ask you one more question, because you mentioned fuel cell cars. Now, do you really think there's future for that? Because I have to say, like, I'm a little bit skeptical, actually a lot skeptical. What do you think? Do you think there is space for that, or is it something that's just going to die off on its own?
I think it's very difficult to predict, because if we talk about a lack of charging infrastructure for electrical cars, probably fuel cell charging infrastructure is by 10 to 15 years behind electrical charging infrastructure. It's expensive to establish. People have a huge concern about safety, transportation of hydrogen, and therefore, and a lot of companies had invested quite severely into fuel cells. There was a 7 BMW already driving on fuel cell. I myself drove it some years ago. But I think now the hype of EV is so strong that probably fuel cells have gone on a back burner. And I think when we talk about mobility, you always have to differentiate between, individual mobility, commercial mobility for passenger cars, and special use mobility, whether it's forklifts, whether it's trucks or trains. And I think there's definitely a niche for fuel cells, much faster when we expect it, but probably not for the common man on the road.
Okay, I think we're on the same page there. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining me here. I'm definitely excited. I'm hoping to meet you in person at some point and check out the new car. So
come to Pebble Beach.
Yes, just like I said, it's down the street from me, so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm definitely going to keep my eye on this and try to report for my audience on whenever you guys are reaching a next milestone. But I'm also going to put the link to the reservation page, just for those who are interested in getting this car. I know we just have a image right now that's a drawing, but I can't wait to see what it's actually going to look like. So thank you so much for joining me, and definitely best of luck in the next few months.
Alex, thanks for having me. Take care.
All right, guys, that's pretty much it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Once again, I will be back at 11 a.m. Pacific time live on Patreon. And so I hope to see you guys then. Other than that, remember to stay charged.